David Wilson stood in his home office, surrounded by framed memories of a life well lived. At 62, his weathered hands still moved with precision as he sorted through photographs for his gallery's upcoming exhibition. Retirement from photojournalism had given him the freedom to teach at the local college and curate his own work images that had captured humanity's triumphs and tragedies across continents. From the kitchen he could hear Carol humming as she prepared dinner. 35 years of marriage had made her presence a comforting constant in his life. Her recent retirement from nursing had opened a new chapter for them both. The cross-country RV trip they'd planned for years was finally taking shape, no longer just a distant dream, but an imminent adventure. "I'm updating our travel blog with the route," David called out. "Want to see if I've missed anything?" Carol's voice floated back. "I trust your planning, honey. Just make sure we stop at that lavender farm in Oregon I told you about." David smiled, opening their shared laptop. As he navigated to their travel blog, a notification appeared from Carol's social media account, which remained logged in. A message from someone named Jay caught his eye. "I can't stop thinking about our conversation yesterday. You understand me in ways no one else does." His finger hovered over the message, hesitating only briefly before clicking. What followed was a thread of increasingly intimate exchanges between Carol and someone named Jason. "I wish I could hold you right now," read one of Carol's messages. "These feelings weren't part of the plan, but I can't seem to stop them." David's throat tightened as he scrolled through months of messages, discovering that Jason was a former patient, 15 years younger than Carol. The words blurred before his eyes as the reality sank in. His wife of 35 years was having an emotional affair. The humming from the kitchen continued, oblivious to the fact that their picture-perfect life had just cracked at its foundation. Over the following weeks, David found himself cataloging changes in Carol that he'd previously dismissed. The new hairstyle she'd gotten, just because. The workout routine she'd started, for her health. The way she angled her phone away when texting. The unexplained absences she attributed to catching up with the nursing crew. Each observation developed like a photographic negative, slowly revealing the truth hidden beneath the surface. One evening, while Carol was at what she called a retirement planning seminar, David found himself searching their shared cloud storage. There, in a folder marked Work References, he discovered recently deleted photos. He restored them, his hands trembling. The images showed Carol laughing with a handsome young man at a waterfront restaurant she'd claimed to have visited with her former colleagues. In one photo, their hands were intertwined on the table. "Dad? You okay?" His daughter Melissa's voice startled him as she let herself in with her spare key. "I brought that lens you wanted to borrow." She looked down at her hands. "I saw Mom with someone at Riverside Cafe last month. She introduced him as a former patient who was considering nursing school." I wanted to believe her, but something felt off about the way they looked at each other. That night, after Melissa left, David installed a tracking app on their shared tablet. Over the next 2 weeks, the app confirmed what he already suspected. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, Carol's location showed her at an apartment complex across town, never at the retirement seminars or colleague lunches she'd described. Each night he lay beside her in bed, a gulf of secrets widening between them. He studied her sleeping face, trying to reconcile the woman he'd loved for decades with the stranger who could lie so convincingly. "We should finalize our RV route this weekend," she said one morning over coffee. "I'm thinking we should add that coastal detour we've talked about." David nodded, the irony bitter on his tongue. She was planning their future adventure while systematically dismantling their past. The confrontation came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Carol returned home, shaking water from her umbrella, her cheeks flushed. "How was lunch with the nursing crew?" David asked from his position at the dining room table. "Lovely. Margaret's daughter just got engaged, and Sheila's moving to Arizona." Carol hung her coat, not meeting his eyes. "Interesting," David said, his voice steady despite the thundering in his chest. "Especially since I called the restaurant. They said no one matching your description was there today." "I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, Carol." He placed his phone on the table, screen up, displaying the messages he'd discovered. "Who's Jason?" She turned slowly, her face draining of color. "You went through my private messages?" "They were open on our shared computer." "But that's hardly the point, is it?" David's voice remained calm, though his hands shook slightly. 35 years, Carol. 35 years, and you couldn't give me the courtesy of honesty? Then what is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife has been having an affair with a man young enough to be our son. Never what? Never touched? Because these photos suggest otherwise. He pulled up the restored images from the cloud. Never lied to me? Because that's clearly not true. Carol sank into a chair, her defenses crumbling. It started innocently. He was a patient recovering from a motorcycle accident during my last month before retirement. He was struggling with depression, and we just connected. He understood things about me that I what? David's composure finally broke. That I couldn't understand after 35 years of marriage? After raising 2 children together? After supporting you through your mother's death and your brother's addiction? You haven't really seen me in years, David, Carol's voice rose. You're always behind your camera or at your gallery. When was the last time you asked me how I felt about retiring? About losing my identity as a nurse, Jason asked. He listened. So this is my fault? David stood, pushing back from the table. You betrayed our marriage because I didn't ask the right questions? Did you think about our children? About our grandchildren? About the life we've built? His voice broke. We were supposed to be traveling across the country together, Carol. Was that all a lie too? Tears streamed down Carol's face. I never meant to hurt you. I got lost somehow. After retirement, I felt invisible, useless. Jason made me feel valued and understood. And I didn't? David whispered, the fight draining from him. After all these years, I didn't make you feel valued? I need to go, he said, grabbing his keys. I can't look at you right now. I'll be at Melissa's. Don't call me. I'll contact you when I'm ready to talk. He walked out into the rain, leaving Carol sobbing at the table that had hosted 35 years of family dinners, holiday celebrations, and shared dreams, now the site of their marriage's potential dissolution. The cabin by the lake had always been their retreat, a place of reconnection. Now it became David's sanctuary of solitude. He canceled their RV trip with a brief email to the rental company, citing family emergency. The words felt inadequate for the collapse of a lifetime together. Dad, everything okay? Mark's voice carried the easy confidence of a man whose life was unfolding according to plan. The silence that followed spoke volumes. There must be some misunderstanding, Mark finally said. Mom wouldn't do that. Did you maybe overreact? You know how you get sometimes, reading too much into things. The words stung. Mark had always been closer to Carol, defending her in family disagreements. The messages were explicit, Mark. The photos clear. She admitted it. I need to talk to Mom, Mark said, his loyalty evident. This doesn't make sense. After hanging up, David walked to the lake's edge, camera in hand. He began capturing images, a fallen tree, its roots exposed, a solitary boat, untethered and drifting, storm clouds gathering over distant mountains. Each frame reflected the emptiness expanding within him. His brother Alan arrived 3 days later, bearing groceries and the wisdom of someone who'd navigated his own marital collapse years before. I brought the essentials, Alan said, unpacking whiskey alongside the food. How are you holding up? I keep thinking I'll wake up, and this will all be some bizarre dream, David admitted, accepting a glass. I remember that feeling, Alan nodded. It passes, eventually. Then comes the anger. I'm already there, David said. 35 years, Alan. We've been together since we were 27. Who throws that away? A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This was a series of deliberate choices. Alan didn't argue. They sat in silence, watching the sun set over the lake. Carol's emails arrived daily, sometimes multiple times. David read them all, but couldn't bring himself to respond beyond brief acknowledgments that he was safe and needed space. I've ended all contact with Jason, one message read. I realize now what I was risking. Please come home so we can talk. I love you. I've always loved you. Their friends took sides, as people inevitably do. Some stopped calling altogether. Others checked in on him with awkward concern, their discomfort palpable, even through text messages. Their planned couple's trip to wine country was quietly canceled by mutual friends, who couldn't bear the thought of navigating the tension. David's gallery assistant handled the day-to-day operations, allowing him to extend his stay at the cabin indefinitely. There, surrounded by the stark beauty of nature, he began to assemble a new collection of photographs that chronicled his emotional journey, images that spoke of isolation, betrayal, and the slow, painful process of acceptance. 6 weeks into their separation, David agreed to meet Carol at Lakeside Park, the place where, 36 years earlier, he had nervously dropped to one knee with a ring and a promise. He arrived early, watching families feed ducks by the water, children running with the carefree abandon that adults gradually lose. He wondered when he and Carol had lost that simplicity, that transparency with each other. She appeared on the path, looking smaller somehow. Her hair was pulled back simply, her face bare of makeup. She carried a manila envelope and a thermos. "I brought coffee," she said, her voice tentative. "Still black with 1 sugar, right?" He nodded, accepting the cup she poured. They sat on a bench overlooking the water, a careful distance between them. "I almost didn't," David admitted, "but 35 years deserves at least a conversation." Carol nodded, tears already forming. "I've ended all contact with Jason. Completely. I blocked his number, his email, everything." "I know." She looked down at her hands. "I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I did this. It wasn't about you, David. It was about me feeling lost after retirement, about missing the person I was when I was needed professionally. We all face retirement, Carol. We all struggle with identity. Most people don't destroy their marriages over it." She flinched but didn't argue. "I've written everything down, all of it, when it started, what happened, what didn't happen." She handed him the envelope. "I want complete transparency. I'll answer any question, no matter how painful. I'll give you access to everything. My phone, email, social media, whatever you need to rebuild trust." David took the envelope but didn't open it. "I still love you, Carol. That's the hell of it. 35 years doesn't just evaporate. But love isn't the issue here. Trust is, and I don't know if that can be repaired." "I want to try," she said, her voice breaking. "I want to go to counseling. I want to do whatever it takes." A family walked by, a young couple with a toddler between them, swinging her by the arms. David watched them, remembering when he and Carol had done the same with Melissa and Mark. "I'll go to counseling," he finally said, "but I'm not making any promises beyond that. I need time, Carol, and I need honesty, complete honesty, from this point forward." As they parted ways, David realized this was the first conversation in weeks that had left him feeling something other than anger or despair. It wasn't hope, exactly, but perhaps the faintest suggestion that a path forward might exist, though whether that path led to reconciliation or amicable separation remained unclear. The counselor's office featured muted colors and comfortable chairs arranged to facilitate difficult conversations. Dr. Elaine Mercer specialized in couples affected by infidelity, her gentle but direct approach creating a space where painful truths could emerge. "Marriage is a photograph developed over time," she told them in their first session. "When damage occurs, we can't simply reprint the original. We must create something new from what remains." Over weeks of sessions, layers of their relationship were exposed. David acknowledged how his passion for photography had sometimes rendered Carol invisible, his lens focused on the world, but not always on her. "After the kids left home, I felt like your roommate sometimes," Carol admitted during a particularly raw session. "You'd get excited about gallery openings or student exhibitions, but when I talked about my patients, your eyes would glaze over." "I didn't realize," David said, genuinely surprised. "Why didn't you tell me?" Dr. Mercer guided them through exercises in communication and expressing needs without accusation. Progress came in small increments, a difficult conversation navigated without anger, a moment of genuine laughter shared over dinner. Their children watched the reconciliation attempt with mixed emotions. Melissa brought dinner to David's apartment weekly, offering quiet support. "Are you sure about this, Dad?" she asked one evening. "No one would blame you if you decided to walk away." "I'm not sure of anything," he admitted. "But I need to know I tried everything before making that decision." Mark remained distant, his disappointment in both parents evident in brief, formal interactions. The family vacation they'd taken annually for 20 years became a flashpoint when Mark announced he wouldn't attend if this charade of reconciliation was continuing. "You're adults. Make your own choices," he said during a tense phone call. "But don't expect me to pretend everything's fine when it's not." The vacation proceeded without him. David, Carol, Melissa, and her husband navigating the awkward dynamics of a family fractured by betrayal. One night, David found Carol sitting alone on the beach house deck, crying silently. David had no answer. He still found himself watching Carol when she received text messages, noting when she left a room to take a call. Trust, once broken, proved painfully slow to rebuild. 3 months into counseling, David packed his camera gear for a solo trip to the mountains. The autumn colors were peaking, a photographer's dream, but his purpose was more personal than professional. He needed clarity that couldn't be found in the counselor's office or in Carol's tearful apologies. The cabin he rented was sparse but offered spectacular views of valleys painted in crimson and gold. Each morning he hiked to different vantage points, capturing the interplay of light and shadow across the landscape. In these moments, camera to his eye, he found the focus that eluded him in everyday life. On the third day, a sudden storm forced him back to the cabin early. As rain lashed against the windows, he reviewed his photographs on his laptop. One image caught his attention: a fallen tree spanning a ravine, its exposed roots clinging to one cliff while its branches reached toward the other. Despite its broken foundation, it formed a bridge across the divide. "I need to make a decision," he said without preamble. "I can't keep living in limbo." "Fear," David admitted. "Fear that if I recommit, I'll always be waiting for the other shoe to drop. Fear that if I leave, I'll regret throwing away 35 years over one mistake, even a devastating one." "Those are valid fears," Alan said. "But here's the thing about fear. It's a terrible compass. It'll always point you toward safety, not necessarily toward growth." After they hung up, David sat on the cabin porch watching lightning illuminate the mountains in brief, brilliant flashes. He realized that regardless of whether he stayed with Carol or left, he needed to release the anger that had become his constant companion. It was corroding him from within, preventing him from moving forward in any direction. The next morning, he packed his gear and headed home a day early, his mind clearer than it had been in months. The renewal of vows wasn't planned as a grand gesture. It evolved naturally from a conversation in Dr. Mercer's office, where David finally articulated his decision. "I want to rebuild our marriage," he told Carol, his voice steady. "Not because I've forgotten, or because the hurt has disappeared. It hasn't. But because when I look at my life without you in it, it feels incomplete. I'm sure about this. I want to try, really try, not just go through the motions of counseling while keeping one foot out the door." The ceremony took place in their backyard, with only Melissa, her husband, a reluctant but present Mark, and 4 close friends in attendance. Dr. Mercer officiated, acknowledging both the history they honored and the new beginning they sought. "Marriage isn't a single exposure," David said in his vows, camera metaphors coming naturally. "It's a time lapse, capturing changes, growth, sometimes decay, and, if we're fortunate, renewal." Carol's hands trembled as she held his. "I promise transparency, honesty, and presence," she said. "I promise to never again take for granted the life we've built, or the love you've given." Their original RV trip plans were modified. Instead of the 3-month cross-country journey, they started with weekend excursions, gradually extending to week-long trips as comfort and trust incrementally rebuilt. 6 months after their vow renewal, David's gallery unveiled his new exhibition, Reconstruction. Each wall featured pairs of images: a fallen tree beside new growth sprouting from its trunk, an abandoned building alongside its renovation, a drought-cracked landscape next to the same scene after rain. The final wall displayed just one photograph: Carol at sunrise on a mountain overlook, her face turned toward the light, shadows behind her. At the exhibition opening, a student asked about the inspiration behind the collection. "Life breaks things," David replied. "Relationships, trust, expectations. The question isn't whether breakage will occur, but what we choose to create from the pieces." Later that evening, as they packed the RV for their first 2-week journey, Carol paused while stowing camera equipment. "Do you ever regret your decision?" she asked, the question she'd been afraid to voice. "To stay?" David considered this, his photographer's eye noting how the setting sun softened the lines of worry on her face. "There are moments," he admitted. "Days when the trust feels fragile. But regret? No. We're creating something new, Carol. Something that acknowledges the fractures but doesn't define us by them." As they pulled away from their driveway, David reached for Carol's hand. The road ahead would have its own challenges, its own unexpected turns. But for the first time in many months, he found himself looking forward rather than back, his focus shifting from what had been broken to what might yet be built.